Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with another Bible study. Today we're going to be getting back into Deuteronomy, but before we do, if you are new here, if you are unaware of what we're doing here, I have some very unconventional beliefs, and I read the Bible in a different way than most people do. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you should definitely start in Genesis, especially today, because today we're going to be talking about some things that will absolutely step on some toes. And while it is not intentional for me to offend anyone, I hold unconventional beliefs, and so I don't care if I offend people by just reading what the book says and talking about it in my own beliefs. With that being said, we are going to dive into Deuteronomy 18 because we left off in Deuteronomy 17. We are doing a straight line reading of the Bible, right? We're just reading through it and see what it says in its own words. I've talked before about how Leviticus set up the Levitical order as being the authority, right? This is, and Deuteronomy is setting up the history of the Israeli people firmly, right? It's putting it into writing. This is what happened to us to make us who we are. And so, this part of Deuteronomy, where they're talking about the Levitical priests, is reinforcing the Levitical order. Of course, I mean, it worked for them very well. The Levitical priest, indeed, the whole tribe of Levi, shall have no portion or inheritance with Israel. They are to eat the offerings made by fire to the Lord. That is their inheritance. Although they have no inheritance among their brothers, the Lord is their inheritance, as he promised them. This shall be the priest's share from the people who offer a sacrifice, whether a bull or a sheep. The priests are to be given the shoulder, the jowls, and the stomach. That's the shoulder. The jowls are the cheeks, the face, the fleshy part of the face, and what was the stomach. That's the bacon area, right? That's a real fatty meat, like fat, lean, fat, lean, fat, lean. It's a good separation of them right there. Kind of like a brisket. Um, you are to give them the first fruits of your grain, new wine and oil, and the first wool sheared from your flock. For the Lord your God has chosen Levi and his sons out of all your tribes to stand and minister in his name for all time. Now, if a Levite moves from any town of residence throughout Israel and comes in all earnestness to the place the Lord will choose, then he shall serve in the name of the Lord his God, like all his fellow Levites who stand there before the Lord. They shall eat equal portions, even though he has received money from the sale of his father's estate. But the Levites don't receive a portion. But if he sells his portion, yeah, whatever. We talked a lot in Leviticus about the Levites. I'm not going to bother with it today, because this next part is where we're going to start stepping on toes. So, again, if you're unfamiliar with what I am doing here, this is not the day to start, right? When you enter the land that the Lord your God has given you, do not imitate the detestable ways of the nations there. Let no one be found among you who sacrifices his son or daughter in the fire, practices divination or conjuring, interprets omens, practices sorcery, casts spells, consults a medium or a spiritist, or inquires of the dead. For whoever does these things is detestable to the Lord. And because of these detestable things, the Lord your God is driving out the nations before you. All right, there's a good deal to unpack here. First off, the reason that this is outlawed is because it is possible. Not just, yes, you can sacrifice someone, but it is possible to divine and to conjure. It is possible to interpret omens and practice sorcery. All of the things listed here are possible. But before you attempt, and I do not recommend, but before you attempt any of this, you have to have all the laws of creation, which I have an entire video devoted to, in perfect alignment, or else it can go very badly. And that is the real reason why it is a outlawed, cast out thing. Other than this is taking this into the exclusive realm of the Levites. Instead of you being able to interpret omens, now that power is given to the priests to do for you. Whereas before, men walked with God, right? And sacrificed and all of that, but they listened to God directly as opposed to instead going to the priest for the direction they should go. It is very important to bear in mind that the laws of creation are real, just as real as all of these things listed. And if you are out of alignment in the laws of creation, it will cause severe repercussions for you. That is why it is a thing you should not do. I personally don't practice most of these. I do energy manipulation. That's what Jesus was doing. So if that offends you, you've got a real big problem coming in the New Testament. But I don't personally want to deal with the dead, simply because it is easy to be deceived by spirits. And if I know that some people do, and that's your path, and that's fine. Just as much as if you believe Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and the exclusive way to heaven, or if you believe that the only way to get to heaven is the Quran. If that is your belief and you're devoted to it and you live it fully and truly, correctly, then you will achieve that, right? And so this is the same thing. You are free to practice. However, just be very, very careful when you are dealing with any entity outside of yourself, ever at all. Be very, very careful. Now, as far as the spells and the omens and sorcery and divination, make sure you know the laws of creation. Those things are gifts to you. All of these things I do, you can too, and more. That's in there for a reason. It is talking about these things. This is part of what Jesus was trying to disassemble in his ministry. So, if any of that offended you, this is a good spot to stop. Okay, because it's going to get better as we get into it. You must be blameless before the Lord your God. Though these nations which you will dispossess listen to conjurers and diviners, the Lord your God has not permitted you to do so. We talked about things. We talked about entities. We talked about covenants. We talked about the blood and all of the things that are being done and the direction that is being taken. We've talked about all of that. We don't need to get into it again. The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among your brothers. You must listen to him. This is what you asked for of the Lord your God at Horeb on the day of the assembly when you said, let us not hear the voice of the Lord our God or see this fire any more, so that we will not die. And then the Lord said to me, they have spoken well. I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among their brothers. I will put my words in his mouth, and he will tell them everything I command him. And I will hold accountable anyone who does not listen to my words, that the prophet speaks in my name. But if any prophet dares to speak a message in my name that I have not commanded him to speak, or to speak in the name of the other gods, that prophet must be put to death. You may ask in your heart, how can we recognize a message that the Lord has not spoken? When a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord and the message does not come to pass or come true, that is a message the Lord has not spoken. The prophet has spoken presumptuously. Do not be afraid of him. Most of the time, there's never an exclusive, right? But most of the time when there is a message given, it is directly related to current events. It is not going, when it is genuine and comes from God, it is not going to it's not going to relate to some remote, distant future event. Most of the time, unless it is given exclusively for that, and that will be made clear. When the prophet said that this is for the later date, that's when it's being made clear, right? Now, we will deal with the prophets when we get to the prophets' books, and there's a lot of really interesting things that go on in those books. So we're not going to get into that. But this right here is using the Lord's name in vain. If you are making statements in the name of God that do not come true at all in any way, you are a false prophet. If you make a promise in the name of God and you don't hold it true, you are the same. You are not that's what holding the Lord's name in vain means. We talked about that when we went through the commandments, but holding the Lord's name in vain is making promises in his name that he did not tell you to make. Right? You are making promises in the name of God, and they are not ones that he told you to make for him. That is that. It's not saying the dang on it stuff, right? I try not to do that too, because I don't want to trespass in any manner, but that's not what it's about. Cursing is not really what it's about, although you should try to refrain from that too. It's about making promises in the name of the Lord and being a false prophet. This right here is using the name of the Lord in vain. And if any prophet makes a message and it doesn't come true, they are to be ridiculed. I'm not going to say what they say to do, right? Because people are allowed to be dumb, crazy, and insane, and uninformed. All of these things are allowances that we should give to people. And if someone is merely uninformed or ignorant in any manner, we are not to get violent with them because of that. Right? That is not what is laid out in this book. All right, so let's talk about the cities of refuge real quick. This is one that we don't really have to spend a whole lot of time on. And when the Lord your God has cut off the nations whose land he is giving you, and when you have driven them out and settled in their cities and houses, then you are to set apart for yourself 3 cities within the land that the Lord your God is giving you to possess. We talked about geography in other videos. I'm not pulling it up today, but this is talking about the land west of the Jordan River. You are to build roads for yourself and divide the land into 3 regions that the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, so that any manslayer can flee to these cities. Now, this is the situation regarding the manslayer who flees to one of these cities to save his life, having killed his neighbor accidentally without intending to harm him. If he goes into the forest with his neighbor to cut timber and swings his axe to chop down a tree, but the blade flies off the handle and strikes and kills his neighbor, he may flee to one of these cities to save his life. Otherwise, the avenger of blood, which was a position, we talked about that before, but this is somebody who hunts down the wanted people. He's a bounty hunter with the power to execute judgment. The avenger of blood might pursue the manslayer in a rage, overtake him if the distance is great, and strike him dead, though he did not deserve to die, since he did not intend any harm. This is why I'm commanding you to set apart for yourselves 3 cities. And if the Lord your God enlarges your territory, as he swore to your fathers, and gives you all the land he promised them, and if you carefully keep all these commandments I am giving you today, loving the Lord your God and walking in his ways at all times, then you are to add 3 more cities to these 3. Thus, innocent blood will not be shed in the land that the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, so that you will not be guilty of bloodshed. If, however, a man hates his neighbor and lies in wait and attacks him and kills him, and then flees to one of these cities, the elders of his city must send for him, bring him back, and hand him over to the avenger of blood to die. You must show him no pity. You are to purge from Israel the guilt of shedding innocent blood, that it may go well with you. You must not move your neighbor's boundary marker, which was set up by your ancestors to mark the inheritance you shall receive in the land that the Lord your God is giving you to possess. I am mostly nonviolent these days. That has not always been the case. I have walked some very dark paths, and I have dealt with that and talked with God with that, and I am absolved of that. So this right here is one of the few instances where we are talking about aggression when it should be administered. Now, let's go ahead and read the witnesses real quick, and then we'll get into that. But a lone witness is not sufficient to establish any wrongdoing or sin against a man, regardless of what offense he might have committed. A matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. If a false witness testifies against someone, accusing them of a crime, both parties to the dispute must stand in the presence of the Lord, before the priests and the judges who are in office at that time. The judges shall investigate thoroughly, And if the witness is proven to be a liar who has falsely accused his brother, you must do to him as he intended to do to his brother. You must purge the evil from among you. Then the rest of the people will hear and be afraid, and they will never again do anything so evil among you. You must show no pity, life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. All right, now let's talk about it. I agree with almost all of this, right? So, if someone, like I'm a big person for prison reform. I want our prisons to be a rehabilitation device. I know that that is impossible because currently they are energy farms. They are very much batteries for blood sacrifice in our current situation. That is very much what our current prison systems are. But what I would like to see is a rehabilitation system. If rehabilitation is not a possibility, and in some cases it is not. I know people, like I would never put beyond God that it is possible for him to turn anyone to him, ever. But I have met some people that I can be pretty sure they are never going to turn to walk the right path. It is never going to happen. They are going to keep hate in their heart until they die. I hate that, right? I pray for them to be delivered from that. But they are choosing it actively and loving it actively. These people are beyond the point of rehabilitation. We can put them into these energy farms, and then they come out of the energy farms much worse than they went in most times. So, if we cannot rehabilitate someone, which should be the point of prison, then we should not allow them to be part of our society. And that is harsh. That is a harsh statement to say. I am not a violent person. I do not believe that innocent blood should be shed. And justice delayed is justice not done. If you know that this person is going to be violent and you can do nothing but keep them caged for the rest of their life, then that should be a short one. Not to be mean. They should have every legal means to prove their innocence. And if they are innocent, they should not be where they are, right? I'm a firm believer in due process and making sure that every bit of it is right. But if we're going to keep a man caged for 80 years, then we should not have him in a cage. He should be able to go home and get to try again. That is my belief. That is what I believe here. Now, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a hand for a hand, and a foot for a foot leaves everybody blind, toothless, without no hands and feet. Right? Everybody sins. Everybody offends. Everybody gets mad and takes it too far. Everybody is mortal. And so we should give much grace to everybody that we possibly can. But you should not allow aggression upon yourself. That's how people die. Ask Abel. You should not allow people to physically come at you or to impede your space and infringe upon your property. Those things are not something that you should allow. So you should be strong enough to resist those things. You are allowed to defend yourself, others, and property. Property is an important one for people to understand, because if you have no respect for the things that I own, why should I have any respect for you? I'm not saying that if somebody steals from you, you should go track them down. But if you catch them in the act, then it's whatever, bro. Like, these are things, right? No life should be spilled arbitrarily. Nobody should be just randomly taken out. We should give every chance for rehabilitation that we possibly can. But some people are not to be rehabilitated, and we should not be feeding the energy. The laws of warfare. When you go out to wage war against your enemies and see horses, chariots, and an army larger than yours, do not be afraid of them. For the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, is with you. When you are about to go into battle, the priest is to come forward and address the army, saying to them, Hear, O Israel, today you are going into battle with your enemies. Do not be faint-hearted or afraid. Do not be alarmed or terrified because of them. For the Lord your God goes with you to fight for you against your enemies, to give you the victory. Furthermore, The officers are to address the army, saying, "Has any man built a new house and not dedicated it? Let him return home, or he may die in battle, and another man dedicate it. Has any man planted a vineyard and not begun to enjoy its fruit? Let him return home, or he may die in battle, and another man may enjoy its fruit. Has any man become pledged to a woman and not married her? Let him return home, or he may die in battle, and another man may marry her." And then the officers shall speak further to the army, saying, "Is there any man afraid or faint-hearted? Let him return home, so that the hearts of his brothers will not melt like his own." I'll be right back. Let me look at him. Come on. Sorry about that. And when the officers have finished addressing the army, they are to appoint commanders to lead it. When you approach a city to fight against it, you are to make an offer of peace, and if they accept your offer of peace and open their gates, all the people there will become forced laborers to serve you. And see, here is where we have problems. For me, this is doctrinal stuff, right? This is why I do what I do. Because here God has a chance, in his infinite wisdom, to put an end to slavery altogether. And he says, no. If they come to you peacefully, enslave them. That's a problem for me. It doesn't have to be for you. You can just continue on. But for me, it's a big problem. Because God just led these people out of slavery. He has delivered them from oppression, and now he is enabling them to oppress others. I don't think that was God. Now, we talked before about how there are great truths in this book, and there are great deceptions in this book. This is a deception. The fact that you can own slaves and treat them however you want. Like, they're implored to treat them civilly, right? But there is nothing civil about saying, we have this army of 600,000 people, and we surround your city, and we say, if you come peacefully, we will just enslave you. No. Come on. But if they refuse to make peace with you and wage war against you, lay siege to that city. And when the Lord your God has delivered it into your hand, you must put every male to the sword. But the women, children, and livestock, and whatever else is in that city, all its spoils, because women, children, and livestock are spoils. Did you know that? You may take as plunder, and you shall use the spoil of your enemy that the Lord your God gives to you. You can use these women, children, and all the spoils that the Lord gives you. Again, I got a problem. I do not lightly say that the Lord told me to say these things. I do not lightly say. I believe the things I tell you. God holds me to account for the words that come out of my mouth. I live that. You might take his plunder and use the spoil of your enemies as the Lord your God gives you. This is how you are to treat all the cities that are far away from you and do not belong to the nations nearby. However, in the cities of the nations that the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, you must not leave alive anything that breathes. For you must devote them to complete destruction. The Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, as the Lord your God has commanded you, so that they cannot teach you to do all the detestable things they do for their gods, and so cause you to sin against the Lord your God. When you lay siege to a city for an extended time while fighting against it to capture it, you must not destroy its trees by putting an axe to them, because you can eat their fruit. You must not cut them down. Are the trees of the field human that you should besiege them? But you may destroy the trees that you know do not produce fruit. Use them to build siege works against the city that is waging war against you until it falls. Now, the history of man, its conquest, slavery, oppression, the history of man in its entirety is pretty daggum horrible. If you look back through the scope of what mankind has done to one another, in all the various fields of battle, not just this one narrow scope, but all the places that man has coexisted, there have been horrible things done. People have been enslaved in every single region of the planet. Every single shade of skin tone has been enslaved at some point. We talked in another video about what we're talking about right here, what this paragraph means right here. Now, when he says you must devote to complete destruction these people, we're talking about roughly 28 million souls. God created souls. People with lives, women and children and grandparents and their pets. Everything that breathes. Now, if God had really wanted that to happen, God could have done it. He did it to Sodom and Gomorrah. Why can he not do it? Why must the plague be man? Why must men go into these places that are established, these peaceful homes of people, and displace them for the sins of their fathers that we have already talked about and dismissed? It is simply to lay precedent for the chosen people. That is the only reason why all of this is, like the first 5 books, is laying the canon for the Israeli people, and that is good. It lifted them up. It has shown a light to many people, but there is deep, deep darkness in here. They are to go into a land that is not theirs and has not ever been theirs, and to kill 28 million souls. And that's a reasonable estimate. It is possibly as much as double that. Simply if they have 2 more kids per family. Right? If instead of 2 they have 4 kids. We're talking about huge numbers of deaths here. We're talking a lot of blood on the ground. Who is your brother? There is a lot right in this book. There is a lot wrong in this book. Let's talk about it. Atonement for an unsolved murder. If one is found slain, lying in a field in the land of the Lord your God has given you to possess, and it is not known who killed him, your elders and judges must come out and measure the distance from the victim to the neighboring cities. And then the elders of the city nearest the victim shall take a heifer that has never been yoked and used for work, and bring the heifer to a valley with running water that has not been plowed or sown, and break its neck there by the stream. And the priest, the son of Levi, shall come forward, for the Lord God has chosen them to serve him and pronounce blessings in his name, and to give a ruling in every dispute in case of assault. And then all the elders of the city nearest the victim, shall wash their hands by the stream over the heifer whose neck has been broken. And they shall declare, our hands did not shed this blood, nor did our eyes see it. Accept this atonement, O Lord, for your people Israel, whom you have redeemed, and do not hold the shedding of innocent blood against them. And the bloodshed will be atoned for, and you shall purge from among you the guilt of shedding innocent blood, since you have done what is right in the eyes of the Lord. It is perfectly acceptable to go in and take these 28 million people out of the land. But if you find somebody and you don't know how they died or who killed them, you have to pull out the measuring tape and see whose city is closest so that they can sacrifice a cow over a river by breaking its neck, and then you'll reach over the cow and wash your hands on the other side of the cow. And you'll be fine. No problems. Because that blood on the ground will not be the blood you have spilled. Come on, bro. Alright, now we got another deep topic to talk about. And when you go to war against your enemies, and the Lord your God delivers them into your hand, and you take them captive, if you see a beautiful woman among them, and you desire her and want to take her as your wife, then you shall bring her into your house. And she must shave her head, trim her nails, and put aside the clothing of her captivity. And after she has lived in your house a full month, and mourned her father and mother, you may have relations with her and be her husband. And she shall be your wife. And if you are not pleased with her, you are to let her go wherever she wishes. But you must not sell her for money or treat her as a slave, since you have dishonored her. Do I even need to say it? I mean, I'm going to, but do I need to? You should be able to read this right here and have your soul scream at you, this is not God. Like, it should scream at you. Your soul should light on fire. What the hell? This cannot be. You are what are you telling me right now? When you go to war against your enemies and God delivers them into your hand and you take them captive and you kill all the men. Juggy, right? And if you see this woman and you're like, damn, that's hot. You to take her back to your house, whether or not she wants to go, and I promise you, she don't want to. She does not want to go to your house. I promise you that. 10,000,000,000,000,000%. She does not want to go to your house. That is not on her mind. But you're to take her to your house because she was pretty. And then shave her head. Are you kidding me? You shall bring her into your house, and she must shave her head and cut her fingernails, and put aside the clothing of her captivity. Now, does that mean that the captives are kept separate and clothed differently because they are slaves? Probably. That's probably what this is talking about. She might have to just sit there naked. I don't know. That's probably perfectly acceptable. Because God told you that. God told you that this is what to do. This is what God told you to do. And people will say, well, the New Testament got rid of that. Well, the Old Testament had it. And Jesus said not a jot or a tittle. So we got a problem. But after a month, when her hair starts growing back and maybe she's getting some fingernails back, then you can just, say, hey, you're my wife now. That's perfectly fine. And if she doesn't enjoy it and she doesn't please you, then you can just kick her out of the house. But you don't get to sell her to nobody else. That's reasonable, right? I mean, that's a perfectly reasonable thing to say. You have taken this woman after slaughtering everything she has known. Cut off her hair, trimmed her nails, put aside her clothing of captivity. You let her stay there for a month, where she starts to be like, all right, well, maybe they're not going to kill me. And then you have sexual relations with her. Because you say, well, you're my wife now. There's a special place for these people. That's all I'm going to say. This is not my God. I do not serve this God. I want to make that clear. I serve the God of creation. He is light, love, truth, and honesty. He is everything good. And He allows all the bad things to give you trials, but He does not, in any instance, tell you that it is okay to rape anybody. Ever, at all, ever. Inheritance rights of the firstborn. Now, here's another good one, right? If a man has two wives, and one is beloved and the other unloved, and both bear him sons, but the unloved wife has the firstborn son. Where have I heard that story before? When that man assigns his inheritance to his sons, he must not appoint the son of the beloved wife as the firstborn over the son of the unloved wife. Boy, there's some conflict to be had behind this particular passage, because Esau might have something to say. Instead, he must acknowledge the firstborn, the son of his unloved wife, by giving him a double portion of all that he has. For that son is the first fruit of his father's strength. The right of the firstborn belongs to him. And if a man has a stubborn and rebellious son who does not obey his father or mother, and does not listen to them when disciplined, His father and mother are to lay hold of him and bring him to the elders of his city, to the gate of his hometown, and say to the elders, this son of ours is stubborn and rebellious. He does not obey us. He is a glutton and a drunkard. And then all the men of this city will stone him to death. So you must purge the evil from among you. And all Israel will hear and be afraid. Sounds like I said before, there are absolutely unreasonable people. And if your child is one of them, that is your responsibility. Right? You are not to enable your child in the path of aggression. Otherwise, you are also on the path of aggression. You can love your child, you can pray for your child, you can do all you can to talk your child out of that path, but you cannot enable them in that path. I wouldn't go as far as to kill my own son, with very limited exceptions. Right? I don't have to worry about that because I have a wonderful child. Like both of my kids, great people. So I don't have to worry about them making the kind of decisions that would force that type of a situation. But there are situations where that should happen. And I hate to say that, right? Because I believe in redemption. But there are people who are beyond that, who refuse that, who do not want a part of that. And sometimes, in order to prevent harm, you must do harm. That is not taking an innocent life. That is acting in defense of. Very fine distinction, and you better be in order with it. And we're going to wrap up today with this one that is very important to the New Testament people. If a man has committed a sin worthy of death, and he is executed, and you hang his body on a tree, you must not leave the body on the tree overnight, but you must be sure to bury him that day. Because anyone who is hung under a tree is under God's curse. You must not defile the land that the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance. Or impale his body on a pole. Right? Anyone who is hanged under God's curse is cited in Galatians. This is important for the New Testament people because this is what they use when they bury Christ in the tomb and he lays there for 3 days and then the stone is rolled back. And I believe in the life, death, birth, resurrection. I just do not believe Jesus was divine. I believe he had a purpose. I believe he achieved his purpose. And then it was subverted by the people that came after him. And we will talk about that in the New Testament. And I am quite aware that that is going to step on some toes. Hopefully I set the tone for y'all today, though. I'm not trying to be directly disrespectful. I am merely reading the book. But there are significant portions of this book that I have significant problems with. That's for me. You may be happy where you are. If you have accepted Christ as your Savior, and you are living the life that you are called to do, and doing the things that you are called to do, not because you're saved by works, but because that is who you're supposed to be now, then you're fine. If you are Islamic, and you follow the Quran and the Hadith, and you uphold the 7 pillars of Islam, all except the parts about the innocence and the things that are being in play right now in various parts of the world, you will go to heaven. You're fine. If you are whatever other religion, you uphold your tenets dutifully and faithfully, and it does not involve bloodshed or violence against others, you're going to be okay. God reaches you where you are every single time. There are things that you have to be aware of because there are real things out there. I know that it makes me sound crazy when I talk about entities and sorcery and magic and energy manipulation, all of these things, but they're real. You don't have to believe me. I can pass any cognitive test that you want. I know what I'm talking about. I cannot give you evidence of an experience. So no, I don't have receipts, but I have had enough experience that I'm confident enough to talk to the world about it. I'm confident enough to talk about what we talked about today. And I would do that in a reasonable manner with anyone. Right? I'm not pulling this out of my yeah. I'm talking about the things that have been directly revealed to me, and I know what that sounds like, and I don't care. I have had a revelatory experience. I have had a dream. dealing with the future. It is on the internet. And we're coming up on the time where I'm either right or it was just a dream. Either way, like God didn't say this is what you're to tell people. I had a dream and I told people what I saw. I didn't say God told me to tell y'all nothing. He told me something. So that's where we're going to wrap this up. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a very difficult topic. I know that I hold some unconventional beliefs. I know that I step on toes. It is unintentional. It is not with offense. But despite the fact that there are great truths in this book despite the best efforts of men. There are great problems in this book. I cannot conceive of a just, loving God that would justify these things today. That is a big deal. God is truth, and the truth will set you free. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I'm praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You're perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pit State. Peace.